respected scholars and dignitaries, and friends. So, normally when I have an audience Hindi speaking, then I speak in Hindi. When there are some other people, in the audience for whom English is more convenient, then I speak in English. But of course, when the audience is Tibetan, then I speak in Tibetan. But I think there could be some people who are more, convenient with English. So I should go with the English. It is, so nice to see the Indian, traditions, the philosophical traditions coming together at one platform and exchanging. So in fact, this is not a new event. This has been going for 1,000 years. Actually, this had been much more intensive and much more deeper than we have now. Earlier, you can see, I used to say that in order to see the interaction among the Indian schools, philosophical schools of thought, we do not need to go to a historian to ask, how the interaction took place and what were the process and fruitions and things like that. But we can see the Shastras. If you look at the Shastras of respective schools, then we can see that at what time there was influence from other, at what time there was influence, and then what upgradations and modifications took place in the respective Shastras and moved ahead. This is the wonderful thing that took place in India. That they were not just interacting verbally without taking and listening to others, but there was a hearing, listening carefully, respectfully, and taking those things. And then if they, need to be modified in their own system, they modify and then go forward. So they used to be very, very, curious about, waiting for, suppose someone does a kind of refutation or some reflections on a particular text, then we found that a text written in Kashmir was responded from South India within 3 months' time. So that was the curiosity, you see. And this kind of richness never took place in other parts of the world. And this is the richness that the Indian knowledge system had in the past, and that is one of the reasons that how it advanced further, particularly in terms of philosophy, epistemology, and logic. We can see the texts, right, the treatises, and how they move forward. And this is a knowledge which grew not in parallel, which weaved in their own fabric of Indian knowledge system, and then went further. And then made this beautiful, design of Indian knowledge system and the beautiful design of their respective schools of thought. And this we need to. And this is not just we have been listening this morning, just and then Parvati Immaji also said about the experiential. The experiential part is the most important thing. And nowadays, we are very much influenced by modern, knowledge system, information. If we have information, you just, mug up those information and vomit those information during 3 hours examination time, and then you get good grade and you are eligible. In ancient time, the eligibility of the teachers were not just, knowledge. Knowledge has 2 parts, right? What one has, verbally studied, theoretical, study, and what one has, imbibed in one's life, and experiential knowledge. And that part is the most important part. And when I'm not going to quote those things here and discuss because that is a different subject. The eligibility for a teacher. and eligibility. When the teacher is supposed to have, accomplished the knowledge, jnana. Knowledge is not a good term for jnana. The jnana has so many aspects. When the student has accomplished the jnana, then the teacher, authenticates that, and then recognizes that you are, matured enough to be, to be given certified, and then he is sent to the society. And that is how the jnana, the dissemination of jnana happens. So in this very gathering, since we have lots of Indian philosophical tradition, and also we are talking about Nishkama Seva, and I'm to talk about this very topic from Buddhist perspective. Nishkama Seva is actually, in general, all of the religions carry that message, and also in practice. Particularly in India, the Nishkama Seva is the theme of the core element of every religion. And then how they are carried out, and that differs from time to time, differs from organization to organization, and also circumstances and things like that. But the selfless, the service to all beings is the foundation of Indian religious system. So from Buddhist point of view, the service, any kind of action, if you are, trying to perform a virtuous action, then the action has to be looked at 3 levels. The most important thing is the intention behind the action. Right? The intention behind the action. So this is very, very tough. We cannot say that once I thought and now I'm doing this, and in the course of action what happens. These are all very, very important. Intention before the action begins. This is the first stage. Intention during the process of the action. That is the second stage. Intention after the completion of the, at the completion of the action. That is the third stage. Now action could be momentary, action could be day-long, action could be month-long, action could be lifelong. Right? So the practitioners, they aim for a perfect, action to be performed. As there is a concept of Dashparamita and Chaparamita, the 6 perfections. For example, the danas, right? Dana, to reach to that stage of perfection, it is really, really, very tough. But when one does it, having that kind of thing in mind as a vision to be perfected in dana, shila, and shanti, vira, prajna, that's all. And then the samadhi paramita and prajna paramita. So there are many professions to be perfected through practices.
What is paramita?
Paramita. Yeah, paramita is to reach to that perfection. Yeah. So for example, dana paramita. So dana paramita has, since you have asked this, dana paramita is that, and in one of the texts it is said that dana paramita, whether one has achieved that stage of perfection, is not, the parameter is not that you have served all sentient beings. The parameter for having achieved is how much you have developed your own mental state, that you are able to give anything that you have. You can go to any extent. That, as you yesterday Professor Kapoorji narrated the example of the tigress, in Jataka Kathai. So Jataka Kathas are not just stories. Buddha narrated these stories, the story of his past life. So when he was practicing at that time. So one can give one's life also easily for somebody who is, hungry or needed. Then that is the perfection is in one's own kind of status, not on the object. So this is a very important thing, that once the person reaches to that dana paramita, that you are able to happily give everything that is required to be given, then that is the perfection of it. And there is also in the Shastras a quotation saying that if somebody asks your eyes, then you would be very happy to give it, rather than reluctantly giving. That won't be a dan paramita. If you hear that one, when one hears somebody asking to give that person something, then that kind of voice itself sounds like a music to that person, and then voluntarily, spontaneously, the action comes, right? So here, when we are doing in our ordinary case, when we are say nishkama seva, and then these three stages of intention must be checked every moment, because we know that the ordinary beings cannot be perfected in all stages, but our aim is the paramita dana or paramita seva, right? Because in dana there are amish dana, property, and then annadana and every kind of material danas, and then is abhay dana, and then is the dharma dana, jnana dana. So the supreme dana is the jnana dana, right? So these, when we are giving at that time, at the intentional level, in the process of the action, at the completion of the action, we need to follow that. Is there any contamination during that very process? If we should try our best, and also there are again another dimension of how this can be looked in, which I'm not going to go in because there's a shortage of time. But in every process, whenever there is, you find, therefore one has to be very introspective. What I have done, what I promised to do something, some seva, is there something, a selfish kind of motive behind it? If there is a slight, then one should try to modify that and make it pure. Parishuddha. But that can be done by going through all kinds of trainings. Yeah, whole kind of these different processes of a training, how to purify your mind and how to get the mind parishuddha, right? So the intention should be, when we have a seva, then as many of the scholars say that it should not be for me but for others, right? If it is, even if it is a kind of for a community, if that service for the community is my community, if the mind becomes the main entity of that community, then that becomes a kind of self-attitude, selfish attitude, and it is associated with the mind, me and mine. Wherever the me and mine is, leveled or it becomes a foundation, then it does not become a nishkama. It is contaminated by selfishness and self-centered, and the mind is also associated with the self. So it is self-centered. So therefore, even if it is a religious kind of action, religious service, we need to say that, is there my religion, therefore I am doing this? The religion is pure by itself. But if I add my religion, that is why I am doing this, so the mind becomes the whole, the mind becomes the whole trademark of that. And that shouldn't be there. And we should leave the religion as pure as it is, and whatever service we can give, that can be given, then it remains pure and your action also becomes pure. Otherwise it becomes contaminated, right? And now social works social work, when we say, some people think that social work has to be done, at a large scale, by giving arms to a number of people, and things like that. But the social work can be done, with the single person. As this morning, somebody raised the question that we are thinking about, the old age and things like that. But what about the moment? Who asked that question? Yeah, so that's a very, pertinent question, very, very related question. Here, in the concept of the Bodhisattva's, way of life, Bodhisattva's way of life, constantly the person is vigilant. Constantly the person is, dedicated for others. The objective of the Bodhisattva is to serve the entire sentient beings. Entire sentient beings, leaving no one behind. And also without any kind of prioritization. So that has to be, again, that is trained through, bringing the mind, in the mind training, bringing the mind at the level of equanimity, bringing the mind at the level of, the compassion. Compassion at that level cannot be reached without, going through the equanimity stage. Compassion, loving kindness, and then finally it reaches to the bodhicitta, which means, aiming for the entire sentient being, and then for them, the person, has an aspiration to achieve Buddhahood, because that is the best instrument by which one can benefit sentient beings. So the entire sentient being is there in one's own vision to serve. With having that kind of vision in mind, if the person serves even a single person, that is served. The single person is served from the perspective of the whole sentient being. So that's serving the single person is also tantamount to serving the entire sentient being. So that has a much more value than thinking that I'm serving this person. I'm serving a single person, not with that kind of intention, but to serve the entire sentient beings. So sentient beings, when we say, then Bhajan-lok and Sato-lok, rightly. Bhajan-lok and Sato-lok. So Sato-lok is the content, and Bhajan-lok is the container. Now container in the sense that इस जगत में हम रहते हैं और हम जो है ये सत्व-लोक हैं, sentient beings हैं, और जगत के जो ये बाहरी जो वो है ये world, inanimate objects or the world, that is the Bhajan-lok in Buddhist terminology. Satyalok, जी, when Bhajan-lok, Bhajan-lok. So, when we aim for the entire sentient being, the Bhajan-lok is also included in that, because the Bhajan-lok, affects sentient beings who live there. So therefore, it includes both the living beings and non-living beings, right? And I think I'm running out of time soon. So that is why the purification of mind is a whole kind of spiritual practice in Buddhism. And purification through mind training of emotional regulations, mind training of mindfulness. This is a very vast area of training, that how one can purify one's mind, right? So this is a very long process, and this is a result of, because in Buddhism there is a very deep and profound and sophisticated science of mind. The science of mind. So many of the students and scholars are from chemistry. So I would like to ask how many chemical elements are there? Chemical elements. Around 122, some say 120. Okay, anyway, doesn't matter. Around 120. So this is the result of going deep down to the very unit of the chemical and the physical world that the Western civilization has and science has got, which is very highly appreciable. And because of that, lots of things can happen. And at the same time, the world the Western world has not explored the inner world, whereas in India, in the Indian tradition, we have this inner world which is much more studied and explored. So in that context, in Buddhism, you can find the mental elements. If they are broken down into the units, then you can find that in the Abhidharmas there are 51 and 53 mental elements. But in other shastras, we find additional mental factors. Altogether, it is over 100. So this means that we have explored the final components of mind. And then, what is the necessity behind finding this? Is because our mind is very complex. So mind is very complex, and all these the mental factors. If we just confine to 153 or 51, there are many groups of the mental factors which, according to Buddhist technical terminology, is called the Cetasika, Chitta and Cetasika. So the Cetasikas, there are many groups. The virtuous, when one has a virtuous kind of mental state, how many Cetasikas are there? When one has non-virtuous, how many Cetasikas are there? Suppose I am holding this phone, and during this time, when I have a virtuous mental state, then how many mental components are there? And these are as if you are studying the chemicals of the mind, and then how they function. Now, more interesting is not only just those units of mind, but also the characteristics, the functions of each of those, characteristics of each of those mental factors, and then functions of each of these, and concomitant mental factors. Each mind, there cannot be just a single, mental factor. It has to be associated with a bunch of others, which are concomitant in nature. And then how they grow, and then how they impact each of these. For example, anger grows. How anger grows? Why anger grows? From where anger grows? And then to what extent anger goes further, and then how this can be controlled, and how this can be managed. And these are all in the mindful trainings and the mind trainings. These are taught how to manage, and then this can be managed and tackled at several levels. One is at the controlling level. When one has, then one can control through various logical processes and practices, and one can subdue it to a certain extent through practice. Subdue it, not letting it come out. And then it is not done overnight, but that needs quite a good course of time to go through that. And then finally, the anger can be eliminated. So the elimination, subjugation, and then avoidance or controlling of the anger, and all these afflictive emotions, afflictive minds can be treated in a similar manner. So this is something that very unique to Indian system. And now just to give some the idea about what this system is contributing to the modern world. In the last 30 years, modern neuroscientists, neuropsychologists, physicists, and cognitive scientists and psychologists, they have met with the Buddhism, and then in the course of a very serious interaction, these neuroscientists worked in their laboratories, bringing the sadhakas, meditators, from the caves who have meditated for 60,000 hours. Finished? Okay, it's just a half run. Okay, I'll just jump. Okay. I'll skip that. The interaction with her, but it has made a very significant impact on the modern neuroscience, and modern neuroscience has changed. It has changed in many ways because neuroplasticity has come. Earlier, the neurocircuits were regarded to be, static. Now they are regarded to be not static, but can be changed through, environment, through practice, and epigenetics. Even the genes expression can be changed now through meditation. So I won't go into, and as a result, now in public and also in education system, this has come down, and the children are being taught, people are being taught, and in many of the countries, the officers, the police, and the doctors are trained through this kind of mind training and mental emotional regulation educations. So why in Buddhism, the philosophies, why these things arise, and what is the importance of the philosophy related to our spiritual practice. There is a shloka in Acharya Nagarjuna's Mudamante Kariga, Karma Klesha Chayat Moksha. Moksha is attained through the through the destruction of karma and klesha. Karma kleshaha vikalpataha. So karma klesh comes from vikalpa, that is a mental conception, conceptual thought. Te prapanchat prapanchastu shunyatayam nirudhayate. So where from these thoughts come? They come from prapancha. And where the prapancha goes, when you have the philosophy of emptiness or dependent origination, when you practice with that, when you imbibe with this, when you live with this, then these prapanchas, nirudhyate in the meditation of shunyata. So that is why the dependence arising and the emptiness, the philosophy of emptiness is very important in Buddhism. That because whatever appears to us is some kind of things solid, independent, having out there objectively, but in reality this is not the case. It is mere projection of our thought and language and convention. But the gap between the appearance and reality is very big, and that is how we live, carrying that gap within ourselves and living with that kind of believing in that there is out there independent and objective existence of phenomena. So therefore, darshan is very important, but darshan remains a darshan if it is theoretically studied. We can understand Madhyamik darshan, we can understand Vedanta darshan, we can understand Sankhya darshan, but unless it is put into your practice, it does not become drishti. In order to have a proper drishti of that kind, then you have to go through that, contemplate it, and meditate, and then it manifests as a part of your drishti, your perception. And now spiritually, how you reach there, through that kind of perception, that is the philosophical stand, and then the true truths are the basis of the whole understanding, and the ultimate truth and conventional truth, and then these truths are the basis of the whole understanding of the whole system. And so far as the path is concerned, then upaya and pragya, these are the wisdom and methods. Through these two, one has to do the practice and then reach the rupakaya and the dharmakaya, or the body of the body of the wisdom and body of the form. So I have jumped lots of things in this, because there is I have already spoken about more than 25 minutes. So therefore in Bodhisattvas make every attempt, every moment to benefit other sentient beings. That is the most important. And in any situation, when the person is talking to somebody, he has a kind of attitude of benefiting others. When he is, teaching, or of course, teaching is a beneficial certainly, but talking to somebody, walking, and then listening to a news, whatever, that could be beneficial. That could be, beneficial if our intention of the perspective is beneficial, with the altruistic kind of attitude. Then the whole thing changes. Then that can be manifested into a beneficial action. So I will stop here and yeah.
The phrase Avi Karma Moksha.
Where?
Avi Moksha.
No. It is, karma klesha khyata moksha. Moksha karma klesha vikalpata. Te prapanchastu niruddhete shunyatayam.
Avi you are using somewhere. Avi Moksha.
No, I see. That is maybe Abhidharma Kosha. Yeah. So that is the name of a text. Yeah, Abhidharma Kosha. And that is the name of a text where the metaphysics and also the major part of the science of mind or the psychology. Karma what?
When you say karma relation,
Yes.
Karma, you have sanchita karma, agami karma.
Oh yeah, certainly. That has to be because sanchita karma is what you have done, and then what you are doing is you are.
So this janmantara is accepted.
Of course. Without janmantara, except yeah.
Karma is another.
Janma is common.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I would like to know the text in which you have delineated these 23 elements of mind.
Oh, that is Abhidharma Kosha, Abhidharma Samuchaya. And then there are remaining, lots of other mental elements which are found in different other texts.
Right.
Particularly in Tantra, the Sukshma, mind, the subtlest mind, mind during awakened state, during sleep, during death, during deep sleep, the mental state or the subtlest mind found in those stages, those states. Yeah. They are also very, extensively explained.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Emptiness of mind. Philosophy of emptiness.
Right?
You mentioned that philosophy of emptiness.
Yes.
Kindly enlighten out further.
Emptiness. Many things that emptiness is just empty of is nothingness. It is not at all nothingness. It is it is empty of essence. Suppose if I find that the table is out there objectively, independently, then that is not the way it is. The table is, when analyzed, when it is processed through your analytical approach, then you won't find the table as as it is. It appears to us, but through that kind of process of analysis, you would find that nothing remains. As in quantum mechanism, also they go down, dissect the material objects to the atom and to the subatomic level, and then finally they dissolve. It is pretty much the same. The essential existence is empty of essential existence, not empty of itself.